We have Gary Charbonneau, who produced the film, and via Zoom, we have Dr. Bailey, Dr. Jarrod Bailey, who is going to tell us a little bit about himself, and Dr. Menache, Menache, who maybe could say a few words about himself as well, and then we'll start the discussion if that's okay.
Oh, excellent. Yes.
Okay, so did you want to say a few words first, and then we'll go?
Oh, yeah, sure. I'm Gary Charbonneau, as you know, the filmmaker. I'll answer some questions and tell you a little bit about how I did this documentary, but I'm interested in hearing from these two gentlemen because they're scientists and so they're right in the know. These are the kinds of people I interviewed, including Dr. Menache. How are you, Andre?
Fine, thank you.
Good to see you, or almost see you. Good to have you here.
Well, the lighting is so terrible in my room. That's why I've switched off my camera.
Okay, we'll believe that. Just quickly, the reason why I did this documentary is I did the first one, the Vancouver Aquarium. So I had a few people contact me about the animal testing issue. And at first I was somewhat reluctant because I didn't want to do a film about ethics and morals, because like so many people, I was under the impression that animal testing actually worked. So I knew that it was an ethical problem. But then as soon as I started to delve into it, I had realized that it's a scientific problem. And I couldn't, as you saw the film, it's hard to believe that it is so broken, and yet it continues today, wasting millions of our donor and tax dollars. So that's my intro. Now I'll pass it off to one of these gentlemen.
Maybe Dr. Bailey, do you want?
Okay, yes, happy to. First of all, thank you for asking me this evening. It's a pleasure to be able to speak to you. My name's Dr. Jarrod Bailey. My current position is the Science Director of an organisation called Animal Free Research UK. In one form or another, it's been in existence for over 50 years, primarily funding animal-free, human relevant research, biomedical research. But also working to educate people, not just members of the public, but scientists about the need for animal-free research, and also doing some public affairs work, working with members of Parliament in Westminster to try and get policy change, funding change to encourage a shift away from animal research and towards animal-free human-specific research. Briefly, my background, my degree and my PhD were in genetics, molecular biology, virology. I then spent 7 years as a senior research associate researching premature birth, looking at genetic reasons why women might have premature babies, which causes lifelong consequences for some of them, and that's something that's very much affected my family. It was during that time that my ethical opposition to animal research was augmented by, as you said, Gary, by a scientific opposition. I learned more and more about how animals were very poor predictors for human biology, for human disease, for human treatments. And I wondered why other researchers researching exactly what I was researching, premature birth, I was using human tissue and human cell cultures, and other researchers were using animals, and we were getting different results. Cut a very long story short, I sat at my desk in the lab one day and wrote 36 letters, I think it was, to various different organizations, saying that this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to leave the lab, as much as I loved it, and work for a change in science to encourage scientists to leave animals behind and to do human relevant science. And that's what I've done largely for the last 18 years, is research and write peer-reviewed papers and book chapters and so on and so forth, making the case, helping to make the case, as other scientists have done, for this shift, for human relevant research, submitting evidence to inquiries and so on and so forth, not just in the UK and Europe, but North America too. And I've been very, very proud to do that. And finally, I think we've reached a tipping point, and we've reached a critical mass where change is starting to happen. And it's now our job, not as a kind of niche campaign, but as augmenting mainstream scientists, journals, and so on are joining our voice for this change. It's our job to accelerate the change that is starting to happen. And I think we're at a very, very exciting point. So that's enough about me. I really look forward to your questions, and over to Andre, who I know. Hello, Andre. Nice to be with you.
Hi, it's a pleasure to be with two good friends. Basically, I'm a veterinary surgeon. I discovered animal experimentation as a veterinary student in South Africa in 1980. I have been campaigning for the past 45 years for the replacement of animals, and I echo everything that Jarrod has said, because I think we are at a tipping point. I think this is a very exciting time, and I think that we're going to see change happen very, very, very rapidly. That's enough about me. I also, like Jarrod, want to hear the questions.
So who has the first question? Okay, go there. I'll let these gentlemen answer first.
I'm afraid I didn't hear the question.
Can you repeat the question, Gary?
Yeah.
Yes, the question was, where do you begin? Where's the best place to start making changes? Because it seems to be all about the money. Do we go after government or whereabouts?
I'll let Jarrod go first.
Thank you, Andre. It's a really good question, and it's something that's taxed a lot of us who've been working in this for some time, because things that really should have worked and we thought would work haven't. So where do we start? What do we try next? And I think what's really encouraging is that people are starting to think really, really strategically about this now. And actually, in some ways, it doesn't matter what works. It just matters that it does work. And I think that's an epiphany we're all starting to have. So what works is different for different people. The ethics, the animal ethics, well, that should work. Lots of people don't like cruelty to animals and want to avoid that. That works for some people. The scientific side of things works for some people. Some scientists are driven by that. There's a human ethical aspect, of course, which is if we're doing bad science, animal-based science that doesn't translate well, then the human ethical aspect is that human patients aren't being served by that science. So there's human suffering, human ethics to factor into that. And that's something that's starting to be realized too. I think one thing that many of us are realizing is that some patient groups, specific patient groups for specific diseases, are starting to feel frustration now. They're looking at science and saying, well, where is the benefit? Where is the clinical translation of everything you're doing? Where's the understanding of our disease? Where are the new treatments for our disease? So this frustration we can harness too, but also the money does come into it. And I think one really, really nice example of this was in a recent publication showing that one of the biggest reasons for the failures of new drugs in clinical trials is drug-induced liver injury, is liver toxicity. Now that's not predicted well by animals, and it's just been shown that human liver on a chip technologies, we all hear about these organ on a chip technologies, which are amazing. Human liver on a chip technologies predict this much, much, much better than animals. And if pharmaceutical companies did this and regulators accepted this, it could be worth $3 billion every year to the pharmaceutical industry. Now it's that sort of fact that is really pricking up the ears of not just the industry and the regulators, but members of parliament, politicians across the world who realize that this means successful industry, corporation tax, jobs, being a scientific leader in the world. So there's many, many different things. And I think what's really encouraging is that campaign groups there's many around the world, they're starting to switch onto this and be multi-factored in what they're doing, realizing that the animal ethics, the human ethics, the science and the money, everything, the frustration of the patient groups, everything works together to reach as many people as possible. And it's that is going to facilitate change from within the pharmaceutical industry and the regulators, change from within the scientific establishment, from within the biotech companies who are providing the human relevant means to do humane, human relevant science. And that, I think, is why we're at a really, really exciting point where change is starting to happen. It's accelerating. We're very quickly going to reach, if we haven't already, critical mass in the tipping point. And our job now is to encourage that and to facilitate it and to accelerate it. And people will realize that everybody wins from this. Everybody benefits from this. And we'll wonder why we didn't do it 20 or 30 years or even more ago.
Andre, would you like to
I'd
have
like
your
to
view?
weigh in there. I'd like to weigh in.
Yes, weigh in.
I echo, of course, everything that Jarrod has said. I'd like to just look at the three categories, just to simplify things, the three categories of animal experimentation. So we have education and training. Now that accounts for less than 1% of animal use, but today alternatives to the use of animals in education and training is considered the norm. So that is a huge success story. So, you know, the use of animals in veterinary medicine and human medicine is virtually being replaced almost completely. So that is a huge success story. But that, as I say, accounts for only about 1% of less than 1% of animal use. The second category I'd like to mention is the use of animals in regulatory testing. So that's the sort of thing that, you know, the FDA requires and the European Medicines Agency requires. That accounts for between 20 and 25% of all animal use. And there we are seeing a huge change thanks to 21st century technology. Jarrod mentioned organs on chips. Now, you may or may not be aware of the FDA Modernization Act. Now, the FDA Modernization Act opens the doors for all these non-animal technologies to be used big time. And although it's been approved by the US Senate, but not yet the House of Representatives, the FDA has already approved a first human organ on a chip for a rare neuromuscular disease. That sets a precedent. In other words, the FDA did not even wait for the US government to validate the Modernization Act. That is very important. Another important issue, and I again echo what Jarrod said, is the money. Now, what is going to make change happen far faster in the pharmaceutical industry and hopefully the chemical industry is shareholder pressure. The shareholders, once they are informed that animal testing is both cruel and completely out of date and not predictive compared to 21st century technology, it becomes a no-brainer. It's painfully obvious. And there was a recent editorial in the Wall Street Journal that illustrated this beautifully. So you can imagine the Wall Street Journal is one of the two most read, finance journals in the world. And so you will have hundreds of thousands of shareholders reading this editorial. So this message is getting across. And so today we have the technology to replace animal testing in the regulatory arena. So we're talking replacing 25% of all animal testing across the board. That is huge. And now you've got a domino effect, because as soon as the pharmaceutical industry starts using 21st century technology, the people in laboratories, in universities and research institutions who are still using animals, that's called basic research, fundamental research, applied research, the pharmaceutical industry will no longer be interested in animal data. They'll say, no, we're using human organs on chips. We want you guys to develop treatments using humans or organs on chips so we can apply that to our industry. So there will be a domino effect. But in terms of strategy, it's much easier to eliminate animal testing in the regulatory arena first, and then move to universities, et cetera, et cetera. So that is sort of roughly how I see things.
As a documentary filmmaker, that was one of the questions I would ask myself to share this with others, because a lot of people want to know what they can do about it. And I echo this as well, because for me, it's going after the politicians, going after the laws, because once we can start changing laws, then people can start seeing why the laws are being changed, and then they can start hearing about the 95% failure rates. And through my documentary, there was a lot of people who didn't want to speak with me because they were afraid to lose their jobs. There's also that pressure, not just trying to change it, but there's people that just want this to stay here, and so people were afraid. Grants are being turned down if they're not using animals. And then, as you heard, I think it was from Erin Hill, Dr. Hill. It's frustrating in that, because that she was in the United States, but I had her in the film because it replicates in Canada as well. That there are they are getting these results from using human biological research, but then they have to test on animals, which to see if it works. And they're saying it does work. We've tested on human, but the law says that we have to go into it's unbelievably broken. So there's different methods. Do we go after shareholders? Do we go after the politicians? And as these gentlemen explained, we kind of have to go. It is so vast and so big. I think you pick the area that you feel comfortable with, because you can choose any area because it's so open right now. But and I also agree that it will come fast, because it is such a devastating failure. You can't even argue about it. So for me, it's more the legal aspect. Start changing the laws, and then hopefully people from there. But at the same time, go after the shareholders and get the science out there. So that's my response. And I believe you had a question as well.
Years of significant pushback. And like, I guess one example I had was that I talked to this guy, we had signs outside St. Paul's, and then the doctor comes out and he's like, oh yeah, for the most part, I'm against animal testing, except for, I think it was like genome testing with mice, where you like breed them to have, I guess he said diseases. At this point, I'm wondering whether like disease traits or diseases. And he was like, oh yeah, well, I'm not against that. And I didn't really have anything to say to that, because I'm not a scientist. And so I figured, like, in that instance, I was like, yeah, that's some significant pushback. But what else? What should we like anticipate encountering? Just like, what are ways around that? You figure.
Did you two hear that?
Only half.
Caught a little bit of it.
It's what kind of pushback or can we expect? Some doctors, even though they agree with it, they also believe that I think you said mice genome is successful or something. Breeding mice with diseases, etc. That they still believe in something. So what is the pushback and like the arguments that they hold on to that we can expect? So may as well go in the same order.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think I've written about this, not just about genetic differences between species that mean you cannot reliably translate a finding in one species to another, but how faulty the genetic modification process is. You can't just cut a gene out of a mouse, let's say, or insert a gene into a mouse and expect it to behave the same way and do exactly the same job and to produce proteins or enzymes that interact with all the same molecules that they do in human beings. We have to remember that there's a lot of variety, a lot of variation and diversity within one species. Humans are incredibly diverse in so many ways biologically. So when you're modeling humans, well, which humans are you modeling? And this is something that's just overlooked, the intraspecies variation. And it's the same with mice or with dogs or with monkeys. You find variations between types of mice, types of dogs, types of monkeys, geographical differences between them. So it's hard to even model different types of dog or different types of monkeys or different types of mice. Never mind extrapolate to humans. We know there are sex-based differences. Males and females are very different. So how do you apply results from a male specific strain of mouse to a human adult female that's maybe from Southeast Asia or from Africa or from North America? This is what we're losing. And the process of creating genetically modified animals is so poor, so inefficient, is replete with so many off-target effects that you don't really know, unless you look very hard, what's causing the effect that you're seeing. And if you look really hard, you find these off-target effects, and it's just nonsense. The simple point is that to understand what a gene does, how it affects a particular disease, you have to restrict your analysis, your view, to human biology. It's that simple, and take account of human variations. If you try and apply what you're finding in another species to human biology, it's odds on, hugely odds on, that you're going to fail. And the point is this, final point, and then Andre, please jump in. We've always had the methods to do this, to restrict our view to human biology, but they are more powerful and more accessible than ever before. So do your genetic analyses, do your genetic tweaks, but do them in advanced human cell cultures that will tell you more about human biology than an animal ever can. And the final point is, one of the arguments we hear is we need the complexity that you get when you use a whole living, breathing animal. And that, I'm afraid, is absolute nonsense. It's so unscientific. All of the complexity is lots and lots of different differences, biological differences, piled on top of one another. And it's such complex nonsense when you put it all together that you simply can't translate to human biology. We have to restrict our view to human biology. We can, and the sooner we do it, science becomes more humane and more human relevant and more translational to clinical human benefit. And we'll wish we'd done it years ago, just to say that again.
So if I can just add something to that, animal researchers want to keep the debate very superficial. They are very happy, to face off against animal rights people with no scientific background. They do not want to debate Jarrod Bailey. They do not want to debate people like myself, because they know they'll lose. And they are not being held to account, because the animal research ethics committees rubber stamp all of their requests. I know, because I, for 13 years, have sat on animal rights, animal research ethics committees. I know their tricks. It's interesting that the NIH in 2015 stopped funding chimpanzee research. And this was based largely, and I think even Jarrod Bailey contributed to this, it was based on a report published by the Institute of Medicine, which said that biomedical research no longer needed chimpanzees. They could do without chimpanzees. Now, chimpanzees are the best model, if you like, the closest living relative with whom we share about 98% of our DNA. And yet chimpanzees are immune to HIV, AIDS, hepatitis, common malaria, and they have different cancers to ours. So if the chimpanzee is no longer considered to be necessary in biomedical research, what does that say about mice? I mean, we are separated from chimpanzees by about 7 million years of evolution. We are separated from mice by 90 million years of evolution. So, I don't know what's happened to the critical thinking on the part of these animal researchers. As I say, there's been no scientific audit. They do not have to justify their work. What we need is a serious scientific debate judged by experts in their respective fields. And this is what is being proposed actually in the UK at the moment in the form of Early Day Motion 278, which is a parliamentary proposal for such a debate. And that will pit experts against animal researchers, and we'll see what the animal researchers, how they justify their research. But we do need an in-depth scientific debate, scientist versus scientist, a level playing field, and this will expose them. Thank you.
I'm just noticing the time. It's 1:37. We said we'd run till about 1:30. We have the room till 2, but I don't know what people's schedule is yet.
I'm fine for a little bit longer. Yes.
Yes.
Dr. Bailey, Dr. Menache, can you stay a little longer?
Absolutely.
Okay, yes. And just before you ask the question, I wanted to mention to you the question that you had asked about the pushback. Yes, you. The one thing that I received a lot was that the scientists and researchers would tell us that we're not ready yet, but we're not ready because we continue to invest in that. And so the sooner that we invest in human biological research, the faster we're going to get there. And that's kind of the one thing that I heard quite often. But and I have a question, but for these two gentlemen, but you go ahead.
Thank you very much for your time. I'm an architect, and so I have a question about actually chemical testing that I know I'm guessing it's not done anymore in Europe, or I'm hoping, but it's still being done here in Canada. And what some architects are actually working on now is the same as, you know, how you have the nutrition data on food products now. You have to have that. We want to also have that on all the construction products. So like the drywall, the wood, the flooring has to have a data on it to say what is in there and all the chemicals that are in there. So many manufacturers are producing that. It's called HPD form now. So we can see what we are actually putting in the building for health reasons. And I can tell you all of them have products, chemicals that cause cancer, asthma, reproductive issues, and they have to list that. If it has been tested and causes that, they have to list that. So I've seen in there that many of the chemicals are actually tested on animals too. So the questions that we architects have is, when other architects talk to me, like, we don't know if when these products use a new chemical in their products, like, do they have to test it one time? Like, is the chemical tested one time, or every time a new product is produced, it's tested again? And then, and over time, for quality reason, do they keep testing it? I just don't know how it works, and I don't know if you know about the laws about that. Thank you.
Dr. Bailey, would you like to go first on that one?
I'm not an expert on the legal requirements, but what I will say is colleagues of mine used to work specifically on chemical testing, and chemical testing in a way is like drug testing, is like any sort of animal testing or research. It doesn't translate. As Andre said, look at the evidence. All the evidence we need is there. It's out there. It doesn't translate. It is not predictive of human risk or of human safety, not sufficiently predictive, and there are better methods we can use to do that. So this is the whole point. Test in animals. You are not going to reliably predict hazard, risk, or safety in humans. We have to do better testing. I wanted to make one more point related to that. I mean, there's still an awful lot of it going on in Europe, but actually the European Chemicals Agency is being quite backward. Actually, is moving backwards rather than forwards. But the point is this, so the evidence is there, but what we're seeing, and we need to try and be positive about this and try and take encouragement for this, is that yes, there are animal researchers and groups representing some animal researchers that are digging in their heels and doubling down and refusing to move. But more than ever before, we have researchers being critical of animal research and applying animal data to humans in mainstream scientific journals and interviews. It's more than ever before. We're having animal researchers or former animal researchers coming to people like us for help. We want to do this research. We don't want to do it in animals. Can you help us do this without using animals and to make it more human relevant? Now, this is not largely for ethical reasons. It's for scientific reasons. They know this is better testing. This is better research, and they're wanting to do it. We have, while the pharmaceutical industry as a whole, and there are exceptions, are again digging in their heels and demanding that they have to do this and there's no other way to do it. Maybe they can move in time towards some tests being animal free. There are individuals within mainstream huge multinational pharmaceutical companies who will say, yes, we have to move. Yes, we want to move. We're starting to move. We're looking at it. We want to do it. So as we started off this evening or this afternoon, we said that we're reaching, or we're already at a tipping point or a critical mass. This is genuinely starting to happen. It's all based on the evidence that's out there for anyone to see if they want to look at it and embrace it openly, if they looked at it. And people from all different types of research labs, chemical industries, drug industries, they're coming to groups like us for help to do their research and their testing without using animals. And I think that's really, really encouraging. And that is a result of the work that many researchers have done, like Andre, like me, underlining the case with solid evidence that we can use to make this shift happen. So it's actually much more encouraging than you might think.
So I'd like to echo what Jarrod said, I think there will be a domino effect as well, because we're going to see change happen sooner in the pharmaceutical industry than in the chemical industry. But it's going to have a knock-on effect. At the moment, the regulations concerning chemicals is what impact does it have on the environment. So normally, for example, at the level of the OCDE, you have to test on an earthworm, a water flea, a fish, and maybe a rat. And that's it. And once you've done those tests and the results appear reasonable, you can put your chemical on the market. And so we don't know what the effects are going to be on human health until 30 or 40 years later. We discover that this has, causes cancer or Parkinson's or whatever. So that is an unbelievable state of affairs. I mean, the chemical industry has got away with murder. And what the difference also between the pharmaceutical industry and the chemical industry is that in the pharmaceutical industry, there is a thing called pharmacovigilance, where patients and doctors report side effects from drugs, and sometimes drugs get taken off the market because they're causing too many side effects or deaths. You do not have that in the chemical industry. So you have to wait 30 to 40 years for farmers to develop rare cancers, or people who've been exposed to these chemicals for 30 or 40 years, because that's the average sort of incubation period for cancer in humans. And then people start asking questions. And there's been very, very little epidemiological information available. In other words, the chemical industry is not responsible for following, for taking regular blood samples or urine samples or hair samples from the population or people who work very closely with chemicals. It's really been a free-for-all. But I echo what Jarrod said. I'm optimistic that because of the technology that we have today, because things are going to happen, I think, much faster in the pharmaceutical industry, that will have a knock-on effect on the chemical industry.
I had a question, but you both answered it actually, so it's all good. Are there any other questions? Oh, we have one more.
Gary, a question on exploratory research, like xenotransplantation and people organ and human.
Would you like to step up and speak into the mic? I'll have her come up because it sounds somewhat complicated. I don't want to repeat that. I'll forget most of it. So Anna's making her way up here and she has a question. Shall we make this the last question? Is that okay? Would you like to speak over here?
Yes.
This is Anne, by the way.
Hello. Thank you for all this. And I wanted to ask about exploratory sort of research like xenotransplantation. Do you foresee any decline in that? It seems like the scientists all around the world are trying exciting new things to them that are hazardous to humans and animals.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, xenotransplantation is just such an awful issue. It involves a huge amount of suffering. I mean, it's catastrophically bad in terms of translation and progress to any benefit. We've been assured. I've written about this in one of my papers about translation to clinical benefit. We've been assured for years that 2 or 3 years, this is just around the corner and we're going to be able to harvest all sorts of organs from pigs and transplant them into humans, and it'll work and they won't be rejected. And we're no nearer. We're not significantly nearer to that at all. So I think the point I'd like to make again is that this is all evidence-based, and researchers are finally starting to wake up to the evidence that's out there and realizing this is just not going to work. And it's not going to work because it can't work. We know why it doesn't work, how it can never work. We have to do something better. And I think that's the wonderful thing, that individual researchers and more researchers than ever are having this epiphany and wanting to do better science. And I think that's really, really important. One final point is that, we were touching on existing data and everything that's gone before. There's an awful lot of human data out there. And as Andre mentioned, we only know something's hazardous to humans when we look at loads of human data and see that farmers or chemical workers, people that have been exposed to particular things, are developing certain types of problems, of illnesses, of cancers. and people are starting now to realize that this is a treasure trove of data that needs to be used, and are going back and reanalyzing this data and using it, and that's immensely beneficial, much more so than trying to test a new type of genetically modified animal, for example. And the final point is that this kind of computational work as well, of using old data, is starting to really pay dividends in drug repurposing. We can now look at drugs that have been used for many years. There's loads of data out there. We know about their structures and how they work, and we can repurpose existing drugs for new conditions using human advanced cell cultures. That's how we look at the efficacy and which drugs might work for completely different diseases and conditions. So there's just no need to use animals for any purpose whatsoever, and the evidence really is very strong. And I must say again, scientists, whether they're in basic research, applied research, chemical testing, drug testing, they're really starting to wake up and have this epiphany, and it's our job to encourage them and to help them make the shift that more and more of them are wanting to make.
Hey, I'd just like to add that more and more scientists believe that COVID came from the laboratory and not from a wet market in Wuhan. So this is not the time to start transplanting organs from animals into people. I mean, have we learned absolutely nothing from the COVID pandemic? That's really how crazy this world is. And I think once we get this message across to people, they will realize that we're playing with fire here. We must stop this immediately for public health reasons, in addition, obviously, to the huge amount of animal suffering and the fact that no animal transplants last very long. When you put a pig organ inside a monkey, that monkey suffers for about 2 months and then they have to euthanize it. So, and even the pig heart, recently, the fanfare about putting a pig heart into a US citizen, that didn't go very well either, but the media covered it up. And some surgeons are still gung-ho. They say, oh no, we must keep on trying. No, hopefully public opinion will wake up to the fact that it is very dangerous to put living organs of animals inside people, because they contain not only known viruses but unknown viruses. So you can't screen for an unknown virus or an unknown prion, etc. Thank you.